Today, we're diving deep into a powerful and evolving chapter of the Russia-Ukraine war. Centered around the intense operations described in War on All Fronts, Ukraine strikes Russian strongholds. What's happening is not just another update, but a dramatic shift in battlefield momentum, tactical strategy, and the psychological pressure both nations are putting on each other. So sit tight as we explore every angle of this conflict in a clear, emotional, and cinematic style. Ukraine's recent decision to strike Russian strongholds across multiple fronts has completely changed the tempo of the war. These aren't small, symbolic attacks. These are carefully coordinated operations targeting logistics centers, ammunition depots, radar systems, and defensive positions that Russia believed were secure. And when you hit what an army considers secure, you're not just creating physical damage, you're sending a message that nowhere is beyond reach. The way these strikes unfolded tells a lot about Ukraine's evolving strategy. Instead of relying solely on frontline resistance, Ukraine is now focusing heavily on deep strike capabilities. Long-range drones, precision rockets, and sabotage operations are becoming more frequent. Each strike is designed not just to weaken Russian forces, but to stretch them thin, forcing them to defend areas far behind their main line. And when a military is stretched, mistakes happen, delays occur, fear grows. This is what Ukraine is exploiting. One of the most significant targets has been the supply network feeding Russian troops. When you cut fuel lines, destroy ammunition warehouses, or disable transport routes, you weaken the core of an army. Soldiers on the front line might be ready to fight, but without supplies, readiness means nothing. Ukraine's strikes on railway hubs and fuel depots have caused noticeable slowdowns in Russia's ability to rotate troops, move armored vehicles, and deliver heavy weapons where they're most needed. Strategy is not accidental. It's calculated. It's part of a broader plan to undermine Russia's operational stamina. Warfare isn't just about who has more troops or tanks. It's about endurance, the ability to sustain operations over long periods. When your supply chain collapses, your endurance collapses, and Ukraine is hitting exactly where it hurts. At the same time, Ukraine has increased strikes on command centers. By targeting communication networks and command posts, they're disrupting Russia's ability to coordinate units across regions. Imagine trying to fight a battle with your radio network jammed, your supply trucks delayed, and your ammunition burning behind you. That's the pressure Ukraine wants to create. But beyond the tactical dimension, there's a deep psychological element at play. Every explosion inside Russian-controlled territory shakes the confidence of soldiers who once believed they were stationed far from danger. It sends ripples of uncertainty through Russian communities who now hear the war echoing closer to their homes. Psychological warfare matters. Fear weakens resolve. And Ukraine understands this better than ever. Of course, these operations have results. In several regions, Russian forces have been forced to retreat, reorganize, or temporarily abandon positions due to pressure on their supply lines. Ukrainian units, despite dealing with shortages of their own, have taken advantage of these moments, pushing forward, capturing ground, and creating new defensive lines. One key factor driving these successes is intelligence. Ukraine's intelligence network, domestic, digital, and international, has grown sharper throughout the conflict. Using advanced satellite imagery, intercepted communications, and real-time battlefield data, Ukraine can now identify and strike high-value targets with precision. And when precision meets opportunity, the battlefield shifts quickly. Another thing driving momentum is the global support Ukraine continues to receive. New weapon systems, especially long-range strike platforms, are giving Ukraine capabilities it didn't have in the early stages of the war. These tools aren't just symbolic, they make measurable changes on the ground. Every additional system is a new threat for Russia to consider and a new advantage for Ukraine to deploy. Despite all these advancements, the war remains brutally difficult. Ukraine still faces challenges with ammunition shortages, damaged infrastructure, and the constant threat of Russian missile barrages. Russia is far from defeated, and its forces still hold significant territory. This is a grinding, exhausting war for both sides. But momentum is shifting, and shifts in momentum often change the shape of entire wars. As Ukraine strikes deeper into Russian positions, Russia responds by strengthening air defenses, repositioning units, and launching counterattacks. The battlefield becomes fluid. Every gain could be temporary or could turn into a long-term advantage. That's the explosive uncertainty of war. Now we're seeing the emergence of multi-front pressure. Ukraine is pushing in the east, launching raids in the south, and striking infrastructure in Crimea. It's a three-dimensional strategy. Attack where Russia is weak, distract where Russia is strong, and confuse where Russia expects clarity. These kinds of diverse operations force Russia to divide its attention, which is exactly what Ukraine needs right now. The strike on Russian strongholds wasn't a one-time event. It was a signal, a message that Ukraine is moving out of a purely defensive stance and into a more aggressive one. They're taking back initiative. They're taking back momentum. And momentum is a powerful psychological weapon. One particularly impactful moment was Ukraine's precision strike on a major Russian command center that had been coordinating operations across multiple regions. The strike didn't just destroy equipment. It disrupted planning, delayed orders, and created confusion among Russian units that suddenly found themselves without guidance. That kind of disruption can trigger chain reactions that change entire battles. Another important development is the increased use of drone swarms. Ukraine's drone technology has advanced rapidly, allowing it to send dozens of small coordinated drones at once. These drones are hard to shoot down, cheap to produce, and incredibly effective at overwhelming defenses. They can disable radar systems, damage vehicles, and force Russian troops to reveal hidden positions by opening fire. Every drone strike reveals information that can be used for the next round of attacks. This shift toward technological warfare is reshaping the conflict. It's no longer just tank versus tank or soldier versus soldier. It's algorithms, satellite data, autonomous drones, and long-range precision weapons, the future of warfare unfolding in real time. But while technology plays a major role, there's also a human element that can't be ignored. Ukrainian soldiers on the ground continue to fight with extraordinary resilience. Many have been defending their country for years now. Their experience, adaptability, and willingness to reorganize under pressure have been crucial. Veteran units are now working side by side with newly trained brigades, blending experience and fresh energy. Russian troops face their own challenges. Many units are fatigued from long deployments, while others include recently mobilized soldiers with limited experience. This imbalance creates friction in Russian lines, especially when Ukrainian strikes hit command centers or communication hubs. Without strong leadership and coordination, newly mobilized soldiers become vulnerable. Another factor shaping the war is the information battlefield. Both nations are fighting not only with weapons, but with narratives. When Ukraine hits a Russian stronghold, the world hears about it. When Russia attempts a counterattack, Ukraine responds publicly. This constant battle for global perception influences political support, military aid, and international pressure. Ukraine's ability to lift global awareness through coordinated messaging has been a major asset. The world continues to watch, and what the world sees affects decisions that impact the battlefield. As the conflict intensifies, Russia faces the challenge of defending vast territories. A military can control large areas, but defending them all at once requires enormous manpower and resources. Ukraine is exploiting this by attacking weak points, stretching Russian defenses thin, and forcing them to respond reactively rather than proactively. The strikes on Russian strongholds signal a shift from surviving to pushing back. Ukraine is demonstrating that it can strike deeper, faster, and smarter than before. Every operation seems designed to force Russia into uncomfortable positions, physically, strategically, and psychologically. At the same time, the war's humanitarian toll continues to grow. Civilians in both nations face uncertainty, displacement, and constant danger. As Ukraine strikes Russian military targets, Russia continues missile attacks on Ukrainian cities, creating devastation far from the front line. The human cost is staggering, and both populations feel the weight of each escalation. But in the midst of destruction, stories of resilience continue to emerge. Communities rebuilding after strikes, soldiers returning to the front after recovery, families supporting each other through impossible circumstances. These stories are reminders of why Ukraine fights so fiercely and why this conflict matters so deeply. As the war moves forward, analysts believe we'll see more of these multi-front Ukrainian operations, more deep strikes, more tactical surprises, more moments where Russia is forced to adapt quickly or risk losing ground. Ukraine's strategy appears to focus on exhausting Russian logistics, weakening Russian morale, and forcing Russia to defend more territory than it can realistically maintain. This is a long war, and long wars are won through persistence, strategy, and the ability to shift momentum. Ukraine is trying to ensure that momentum stays on its side. The world is watching closely to see how Russia responds. Will they escalate? Will they reinforce key areas? Will they attempt to regain lost ground through heavy offensives? These questions will define the next chapters of the conflict. But one thing is clear. The strikes on Russian strongholds have changed the landscape of the war. They've shown that Ukraine is not backing down. They've shown that deep strike capability can reshape battle plans. They've shown that initiative can shift from one side to another through bold, decisive action. As we continue to follow this evolving situation, it becomes clear that the war is entering a new phase, one defined by strategic unpredictability, technological warfare, and battles fought across multiple fronts simultaneously. And with every strike, every advance, and every tactical adaptation, Ukraine sends a message: the fight is far from over. Thank you for staying with me through this deep dive into the unfolding situation. The story continues, the stakes grow higher, and the world remains on edge as both nations push forward with everything they have. Stay safe, stay aware, and as always, I'll see you in the next one.